Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become a magician part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. The sun sets on the horizon, casting long shadows in the fading orange glow. Streetlights turn on, and families settle down for the evening with each other to share in their day. Well, for almost all families, one woman stands on the balcony of her modest apartment, worried that her son has not returned home yet. She knows her son has been struggling in his life, one in which he was dealt a bad hand. Little did she know that at that moment, a young boy was busy shuffling the deck. 3 hours ago. They say that everyone is created equal, that was always a lie told to placate people's fear of being left behind. But when literal superpowers started manifesting in people throughout the world, things changed overnight. With more people rapidly getting these amazing powers, which everyone called quirks, experts suggest that the remaining population without the possession of a quirk is around 20%. What that doesn't tell you is that 99% of the quirkless are elderly, or people from generations of quirkless. Some take pride in it and call themselves pure bloods, the last remaining humans in a land of monsters. However, for children, maybe 1 in a million doesn't have a quirk anymore. And this young boy is one such person. Being in the area after his diagnosis of his quirkless nature, he received pity from the people in his neighborhood. It was like being born with a disability, except for those born with non-functional legs or eyes. They can be fixed with someone else's quirk now. Not having a quirk, well, no one can give a quirk, this young man knows. He scoured the internet and textbooks, referencing quirks and their potential uses, and he found no evidence of any person who could bequeath a quirk to another. All the time spent though honed an ability of his to analyze and break down quirks as he sees them. He hasn't given up though, he knows somewhere there exists someone who can give him what he wants, not a powerful quirk, not riches or fame, but a chance to prove to everyone else that he's something, and he matters. So it is why he went out looking again. He saw a report that a man was seen in the area, rumors about him said to be that he has multiple quirks. They have seen the man in a black respirator mask going into dead-end alleys and disappearing. It was rare enough that some people had 2 quirks, let alone described as having multiple, so the young boy went out after his middle school classes ended, hoping to learn something about that man's strange circumstance. Ducking the bullies who decided this particular day would be used to practice their quirks on him. The young boy found his intended target, but was prevented from following when a battle between a villain and hero had come barreling down the street. The villain and hero both had fire quirks. The young boy recognized the hero as the upcoming number 4 hero Endeavor. He was rapidly climbing the ranks of the pro hero scene. His power put him very high to begin with, and many people expect him to become the number 3 any day now. But in terms of likability, he was very much unlike his quirk, Cold. The villain was not someone he recognized, but many people don't pay much attention to villains unless they can make a name for themselves, and it looked like this particular villain wanted to prove he had the hots. His dark blue flames casting foreboding shadows on the buildings as the two men dueled. It was some time later that the villain had to flee, realizing he was outclassed in firepower, had fled down the alley that the young boy had seen his target go into. Endeavor had taken one look in the alley and darted off, as no one could be seen in it. The young boy, disheartened that he had missed his chance to speak to the person he had spent weeks tracking down, the only upside was the notes he could gather on both the blue flame user and the professional hero. It wasn't every day he could study fire quirk users up close, let alone 2 at the same time. The young boy closed his notes and turned to get his bearings again before he decided on which way he would need to go to get himself home. Until a sound, something he heard with some regularity, accosted his ears, a sound that made him freeze up because anything less would result in more immediate pain. Oi, Deku. He knew pain was coming either way, but he did want to take as much time before he suffered. As he stood there in air and thought that maybe the pro hero would come back and protect him from what was going to happen. The sheer thought that he might have any sort of luck graced his mind caused him to snort out a laugh. This laugh was later the cause of a more severe beating. "Oh, so you think this is funny to you?" said a young boy with large spiky blonde hair and piercing red eyes in what can only be described as resting bitch face. The young boy, identified as Deku, turned around to face the oncoming threat. "Bakugo," he managed to stutter out. Bakugo wasn't alone, he had 2 other boys with him, a fat kid with what could be described as pitiful wings, and another thin as a rail with elongated fingers. They took to Deku's back, cutting off any potential escape routes, not that he could get far anyway. Bakugo was much faster than him even without using his quirk, so Deku knew not to try. It was much easier to get it over with, so they could all be on their way. "So what was so important that you had to prevent us from training with our quirks? You know we are only trying to be heroes, so we can save worthless people like you from the bad guys." But the sneer that could only come from practiced use, Bakugo approaches the boy and shoves him into what became the most important alley of his life. Don't worry, we can still have time before dinner to get some practice in. For the next hour, Deku was beaten, burned, and bruised by the three boys. They tossed his injured body into a pile of garbage bags and left the alley laughing as he slowly pulled himself from the filth. The labored breathing of the young boy as he clenches the side of his torso shambles out onto the main walkway, peeling a scrap of garbage off of his shoulder as he joins in the foot traffic of the sidewalk. He pushes past pedestrians as he makes his way down the path he thinks he had decided to go before the closest thing to a friend interrupted his thoughts. So while slowly walking, the sun slowly setting, the streets clearing as people make their way home and inside. Then the realization sets in, he has gotten lost. So like any 12-year-old child will do when they get lost, he sat down and cried because he's lost, because he's hurt, because he knows that he will have to call his mother to come get him and explain what happened. Because he knows that doing that will only cause her pain. So he cries. Until a sound, much like a chime, jingles behind him. If not for the memory that a wall should have been behind him, he might not have thought anything of the generic noise that one associates with a convenience story. Turning, he sees a shop. It's a small shack, missing letters from the sign, faded paint, and cracks along the dark wooden exterior. But beneath the growing moss and rotted wood, he can still understand the name of the place, the Shop of Legends, where heroes are made. The young boy is taken aback. A building like this shouldn't be just resting in the middle of a suburban neighborhood, and it definitely wasn't there when he was heading this way. Intrigued, he slowly gets up from his seated spot on the ground, trying his best to ignore the soreness in his gut from earlier. He makes his way to the door and walks in. Having entered the shop, the young boy is stunned. What on the outside looked like a small, dilapidated shop does not betray the interior. He was greeted by the scent of burning incense and a soft melody playing from behind the counter. Beyond that, everything else was a mystery to him. His eyes flutter over the numerous baubles and trinkets as he cautiously makes his way through the store. A shelf containing golden objects with the only distinct feature being the large eye in the center of each object, another with dark obsidian-looking beads, arranged in the form of a necklace. He turns around and shrieks, finding himself face to many faces of shrunken heads all bunched together on a coat rack, jumping back and bumping into a shelf. He turns as he watches various glass-like orbs fall towards the ground, flailing about trying to prevent any of them from shattering on the floor. He manages to catch one, the others harmlessly bounce along the wooden planks and roll under shelves across the store. The quick clearing of the throat from behind him, however, startles the young boy into dropping the sphere he was holding. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to make a me mess," said the young boy. "I'll clean it up." The person who startled him, however, begins to laugh. Taking in the side of the woman, he begins to calm down. She looks to be an old lady, with gray hair and a simple blue dress. After wiping the tears that had begun to form in her eyes, she recognizes that she may have gone too far with the young lad. "Oh ho, I am sorry my child, I guess I developed a bit of a mischievous streak after living here for so long. Don't worry so much about those half-dozen orange balls, one of them went missing a long time ago, and they just haven't worked since." She turns away and begins to shuffle her way to the counter. Not hearing the young boy following her, she starts again. "We don't have all day now, young man, what brings you to my shop?" Clearing his throat, he realizes he had been staring for longer than he should have. "Ahem, I'm Izuku Midoriya. I didn't mean to come into your shop, I just got lost." The woman has shuffled behind the counter at this point and is pointing her head over the top and staring at Izuku, yet for some reason he feels that she's staring past him. "But of course, you were," she sounds calm and soothing. "The only people who can find this shop are the ones who got lost, but whoever lost them is always different." She pulls a large book from underneath the counter and sets it down and begins thumbing through the pages, seemingly forgetting about her guest. Izuku, timid as he is, knows he should continue this conversation with this strange lady. Do you think you can tell me how to get where I want to go?" If he was a bit more perceptive, he would have seen the glint in the woman's eye. "It's starting to get late, and I don't want to worry my mother," quietly under his breath, "more than I already do." The old lady pulls a large black feather and carefully places it in between the pages of the book, closing it and setting the book back under the counter. What would she have to worry about? "You seem like a nice, bright young man. A little dirty and roughed up, but boys will be boys. What would she ever have to worry about?" She begins her inquisition. "Well, you see," Izuku begins to speak, not sure why he feels so comfortable with this old woman. That he hasn't even stuttered during this conversation yet. Might it have something to do with you not having a quirk? Eyebrow raised, not taking her eyes off of the lad. She can tell just by the way he shifts his body around, she is right on the money. "Well, we all have things we struggle with. I myself had a hard time keeping up this shop when I first started." She gazes longingly out the window, as if expecting a visitor. But not being able to do something is no reason to worry, it's very natural. Mused as she returns her gaze to Izuku. But I'm not natural, I'm a freak, everyone has these amazing gifts, and I'm just a Deku, belting out a response to the old lady's wisdom. I get beaten and humiliated every day, and my mom struggles, and it's all my fault, I'm worthless, and I ruined everything I touch, because I don't have a quirk. Tears are already flowing down his face as he begins his rant. Struggling to keep in one place, Izuku wants nothing more than to lash out at himself, the world, and the people who hurt him. He doesn't even hear the old lady approach him and pull him into a tight embrace. "Child, it's okay," she groans as she begins stroking his hair. Hearing his sobs turn into hiccups as he blubbers out an apology for his outburst. "A young man like you, who had to take all the hate the world has and keep smiling, even if it was just for your mother. You're so very strong, so very brave and kind." Patting his back as he ends up sniffling. "But I just cried and pitied myself," Izuku said, confused at the words the woman said to him. "How does that make me strong and brave?" As he uses his jacket sleeve to wipe his eyes. "Do you know why humans cry, Izuku?" she asks, seeing him shake his head awaiting an explanation. "We cry as a way to let others know we are in distress, when words are not enough to express how much we are hurting and suffering, crying is how we can tell another. From any language to any culture that you need help." She pushes him back, holding him at arm's length to look him in the eyes. "It takes a very brave and strong person to ask for help. So, you just tell this old granny what you need help with." "I just want to be a hero so much," Izuku whimpers out. This response surprises the grandma so much she can only respond with, "Oh. But I don't have a quirk and I just can't do it. I'm not strong, I'm not fast, I can't even move stuff with my mind like my mom." Izuku, on the verge of another breakdown, asks, "So how can I be a hero?" The only sound besides the slow sniffles and hiccups of Izuku and the soft music from under the counter is laughter. It starts out as a slow giggle and then grows into a wild cackle. If he wasn't so startled, he would have been disgusted that he could bare his soul to this stranger and that she would begin to laugh at him. He begins to pull away from her, finding himself unable to escape her surprisingly powerful grip. "Oh no, 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 please don't run. I'm sorry, I just haven't heard such a story in a very long time. I mean, no disrespect." The old lady begins to plead. "I just found it funny that this society, any society, would look at a child who wants nothing more than to help people with all his heart and then do everything it can to beat that out of him. It's dark humor. I told you I spent too long in this store." She releases her grasp on the boy. She catches her breath as Izuku takes a step back from her. "I take it you forgot what store you walked into?" The tilting of his head seems to tell her everything she needs to know. "We are the Shop of Legends, and our motto is, where heroes are made. So come on, I have just the means to make you a hero." She once again returns to the counter, grabbing a deck of cards along the way. This sudden shift in demeanor after such an emotional experience leaves Izuku more than confused. He's barely able to parse the words she is saying into some understanding. As he steps toward the counter the shopkeeper sits at, he begins to mutter. "What does she mean, make me a hero? What do those cards have to do with this? Could she just be making it up? Am I in danger? Should I trust her?" The muttering goes on as the air thickens with his anxiety. The slow approach and his nervous nature slowly begins to irritate the woman. "Come on, Midoriya, I may be old, but I don't have all day," she shortly says to him, snapping him from his thoughts. This is enough to make him rush up to the counter. Giving another apology, he looks at the deck in between them both. Staring at the cards, he asks the obvious question, "How are cards going to make me a hero?" He slowly reaches his hand out to the deck, only to squeak out a surprise as the store owner grabs his wrist. Bringing his gaze to match hers, he is taken by the sudden fire and youth in her eyes, a seriousness he hasn't seen in a long time. These cards, the words, carrying an incredible weight behind them, are old, they can tell much about a person. A single card capable of holding an entire story and the more changing one altogether. These are the cards of fate. "Tarot cards?" said with a level of incredulousness he wasn't aware he had. "No, not those cheap knockoffs," letting go of his wrist, "these are the original, what every 2-bit fortune teller wishes they had. Should you draw one, it will dramatically change your fate. Friends, enemies, lovers, and rivals, ones that might have happened might not, you won't be able to go back once you draw. So, if I draw a card, I can be a hero." To Izuku, even saying those words sounded ridiculous, but he did spend almost a month chasing down a masked guy on the rumor he had more than one quirk, and maybe Kachin hit him a bit harder than he normally does, so he's actually considering this. "How much?" "Well, aren't you eager?" chuckled the old woman. "We don't take cash, only trade. For something like this the price is normally, her voice deepens, your soul. A mad cackle comes out, only to stop in a cough. Thought I had the sound system set up for that, supposed to be spooky sounds, and lightning, and the lights were meant to flicker too. Oh well, but normally the price is too steep for even the wealthiest, and too costly for the most powerful. Oh, but you are such a good and honest boy. Who truly wants to help people. Don't see too many of those these days, a dying breed you are, and I might say a little cutie too. This comment causes Izuku's face to flush, so I can take what would have been his trade. All you have to do is shuffle the deck and draw a single card. So, what say you? Izuku stares at the deck. After absorbing the words from the shop owner, he considers what life has in store for him. More bullying, more neglect, hate, anger, and disappointment. But with this all that changes, and he can be a hero. He tentatively reaches for the deck, only to stop and ask one last question. Will my mother have to worry about me? A light chuckle, young Izuku, a mother will always worry about her babies. But I can say she will never have been prouder of you. With that said, any remaining doubt Izuku had was extinguished, and with a newfound confidence he shuffled the deck, setting it down, and finally drawing a card. From beneath his clenched eyes, Izuku looked at the card he had drawn, exhaling his breath he didn't know he was holding. The card itself felt like it was made of the same material all cards were, but this was noticeably heavier and much sturdier than a normal playing card. Turning to see the face, he was greeted by a simple design, a lemniscate overlaid on an asymmetrical hexagram. A simple "huh" escaped his lips. Looking back up he sees the old lady staring at him questioning, I'm sorry, I just thought that something would happen when I drew the card, like flashing lights or you know. This earns a chuckle from the shopkeeper. It's quite alright, after my first interaction with magic, I felt much the same. But the card you drew, it's the magician. Quite powerful if you can learn. You don't have a problem studying, do you? She inquired. Izuku shakes his head and is about to respond when a chime can be heard from an antique clock in the corner. Oh dear, is it already that late? Izuku, it's been wonderful having you here, and I wish you the best of luck, hopefully we can meet again later in the future. She begins pushing him out of the store. I never got your name, ma'am. He called out as he turned to face her one last time. I am Sophie. Now if you want to get home as quickly as possible, head left and point to Izuku's right. Then make a right at the intersection, you'll start to see familiar areas in about a kilometer. She turns to head inside. Wait, a final squeak from Izuku. Sophie turns to face the young man. Ms. Sophie, thank you for bowing to her. I always wanted someone to tell me that I could be a hero, and you have given me a chance. This earns a small chuckle from Sophie. I have to go now, but I hope I can see you again. A short goodbye from Sophie as she watches Izuku run down the street. A click as the door locks, and a turn of a dial as she heads into the back of the shop. Standing on the balcony of her apartment stands a woman, with long green hair tied up in a bun wearing an apron over a pink dress, the last lights of the sun dripping over the roofs of the buildings. In the distance she begins to see the many streetlights come on, this worries her greatly. Her son, Izuku, has never been this late before, he would call or text when he stayed out late. For a normal parent this might seem a bit much, kids staying out late, playing, and having fun. Except her son has a hobby that frankly terrifies her. He is a hero hunter, always chasing the latest fights, and prowling high-risk areas, hoping to see quirks in action. She wants so much to tell him to get another hobby, one that doesn't leave her worried if her son will be collateral damage in a fight, but she can see it's the only thing in his life that makes him happy. After his diagnosis, he began to shut down, his friends stopped coming over, he was sad all the time, and she never could bring herself to confront him about the bruises and cuts he covers up in the bathroom when he thinks he isn't being watched. The only saving grace is her childhood friend Mitsuki, at least her son, Katsuki, is the same age as Izuku, and have been friends ever since they were born. She would prefer that Katsuki was a little less rough around the edges, but he takes after his mother, so she understands. She hears a doorknob turn and a door open, followed by a proclamation that she has been waiting the last few hours for. Mom, I'm home. A small smile graced her lips. Inko Midoriya heads inside to welcome her son back home and to scold him for not letting her know he would be running late. Her first glance at the state of her son sets off alarm bells in her head. There stands Izuku covered in grime, dirt, and what looks like blood, bruises on his cheek, and one of his eyes looks to be swelling shut, but the most startling of all is the smile, the bright million-watt smile that seems to be trying its hardest to brighten up the room. And everything melts away, the concern for his well-being becomes second to knowing what was able to put such a genuine and brilliant smile on her normally gloomy son's face. So, she plays it cool, about as much as a mom can. So sweetie, did you have a good day at school? She begins her inquisition. Nope. Replied Izuku with all the cheerfulness of a kid in a candy store. I got a bunch of homework, and the teachers barely looked at me. If she wasn't so sure he would be treated the same at every other school, she would have transferred him faster than All Might can't save the day, but she can't afford a private school or tutors to spare him from what must be a dismal education. "Oh, so did Katsuki play with you today?" came the next question. Eyeing him as his smile faltered for a second, this was another warning sign that something was wrong. She had her suspicions that Katsuki was not very gentle with her son, but without anything to go off of, she couldn't do anything to help. She would talk to Mitsuki, who would then give Katsuki an earful for being too rough, and it would seem to lessen the situation for a while, but then go right back to how it was. "Yeah, but he just wanted to practice his quirk, so I just kinda stood around." Izuku told his mother, while bending the events, to not worry her. At this point Inko had moved into the kitchen to begin preparing a late dinner. It was a Friday, so Izuku would probably stay up late watching hero videos, and a later supper would mean he would snack less in the night. Just because the depression she went through, scratch that, is going through doesn't mean he needs to eat junk food like she does to cope. It certainly did a number on her figure. She even seemed to have shrunk a few inches too. Thankfully the stress hasn't caused her hair to fall out. But she likes to think she still has what it takes to turn a few heads when she tries. "Well, we ruled out school, and his only friend," she mused. What could be the cause of his sudden shift in demeanor? Izuku, sensing this game of questions could go on for a while, decides to just provide the answer she is looking for. "So I spent the last few weeks tracking rumors of a guy who had multiple quirks," he began explaining. This was no surprise, as Inko would regularly see her son looking up heroes for their quirks, as he said one of them must have a way for me to get one. After finding no evidence, he turned his attention to vigilantes. There was less information, but as he put it, they just want to help people. And not be held up by the rules and regulations that pros have to deal with. She wasn't too happy about that, but she drew the line when she saw him going through prison records about villains and their quirks. She wasn't about to let her son interact with dangerous criminals to try and get a quirk. Stuck in her thoughts, she missed his various mumbling about what sites and references he used, but the comment of, "So I tracked him down to a few kilometers away from here," brought her right back to the conversation. "Wait a minute, you stalked some stranger because of rumors on the internet?" she exclaimed. This was a big worry that her son, in the pursuit of a quirk, would start down the path of delinquency. First it was stalking people, then it was smoking, and finally he would be getting girls pregnant. The whimper of, "My baby is too young to be a father," between quiet sobs, causing Izuku to respond quickly. "Mom, no, stop, I'm not doing whatever it is you think I'm doing. Plus, it's not stalking since I never even caught up to him, I just saw him once. Endeavor, and some villain started burning up a city block in front of me. It's okay, the worst that could have happened would be getting burned to death." This only caused Inko's sobs to become full of wails. But, I met this nice old lady who tried to speak about her breakdown. She told me I can be a hero." This seemingly innocuous statement pierced through the cacophony of the older woman as she ceased her crying and looked at him. Those 5 simple words she couldn't bring herself to say when her son needed to hear them the most, and they came from a complete stranger. It was no wonder he was so elated. He finally had someone who believed in his dream. She did. What she intended as a statement came out more as a question. "Yup, she told me she believed that someone like me, who wanted to help people, shouldn't be held back just because I don't have a quirk, so she gave me a chance." Izuku then went on to explain to his mother about the store and Sophie. It was an emotional tale about how he trashed part of a store and cried for an old lady, and she believed every word of it. "So, she let you draw a card that would change your fate, and all it would cost was your current fate." Confused at how simple and strange that sounds. Since I was never going to get a quirk, I probably wasn't going to live a very eventful or even long life. That latter part of that statement hit her harder than she would let on. She knew the statistics. Over 50% of quirkless people attempted suicide before finishing high school. 80% of them succeeded by their second try. It worried her that her son would become just a number in the future, but she didn't know what to do. Now there was a hope she didn't even know she could have, that her son's future might be entirely different, all because of some strange old lady in a strange old shop. If she was able to find Sophie, she would have to give her a big hug just for the smile she got to see on her darling son's face. One she hadn't seen in many years. "So, did she say what quirk you would get?" she asked, because magician doesn't sound like any quirk I had ever heard of, but you are the expert on quirks. Izuku shakes his head. "She just said I had the magician card and that I would have to study a lot." This leads to him mumbling ideas again. Inko, knowing that her son, left unattended, will stay like this for a while, nudges him. "Well, before you go off and start practicing your new quirk, go get cleaned up and we can eat." How does that sound? Izuku was going to protest his mother's kindly suggestion when his stomach started to growl, and he realizes he hadn't eaten since lunch that day, quite a number of hours ago. And then he remembered being thrown in garbage, so he probably had enough of a stench that his mother could smell him coming from a mile away. Blushing and shuffling his feet awkwardly, he nods, "Right, I'll go get cleaned up." Heading off to his room to grab a change of clothes before hitting the shower, he steps into his room and sits on his bed, a large trunk. Old looking, made of aged leather with metal locks and clasps that look as though they would rust off any minute. "Hey mom, did you go in my room today?" He calls down the hall. "No sweetie, is something wrong?" Not wanting to draw attention to this change just yet, he comes up with a plan. "Just couldn't find my favorite All Might shirt." Getting a response to check his hamper, he expertly defused that situation. Approaching the trunk on his bed, he runs his fingers over the cool leather. In doing so, one of the locks clacks open, startling the boy. Tentatively he opens the compartment, carefully lifting the lid. He peers inside and sees 4 simple objects: a book, a black plastic wand with white tipped ends, a top hat with a white band, and lastly a cloak. Taking these items out of the box and inspecting them, they seem fairly ordinary. A tap of the wand, reaching into the hat and feeling the fabric of the cloak, he determines these are pretty cheaply made. He sets those on his desk and turns to the book. An eerie calm sets over him as he slides his hands down the spine of the tome, feeling beneath his fingertips of an old and ancient power hidden in the pages. He cracks it open to the first page, finding it contains a few words in a language he doesn't understand. Flipping the pages finds the rest blank. Returning to the first page, he sees the words slowly begin to glow and reshape themselves into kanji. It reads as: "To claim ownership of this ancient wisdom of mages, one must place a belief and trust in the arts taught. Place your hand on the page and state your intentions." Izuku stares at the page and slowly places his hand on the parchment, and with a conviction only mustered in times of need, proudly declares, "I want to be a hero." The only response is a blinding light as kanji and drawings begin to fly around the room and go into the book, filling the pages with information and what he can only assume is the magic he will need to study. He quickly returns to the first page to see any changes, and the text now reads, "Magic is a wondrous power that for millennia was used by many to ease their burdens in life. But like all power, it can be used for terrible things, so rules were put in place to protect. Magic cannot be used to kill, nor can it be used to bring life back to those who lost it. Magic cannot interfere with love in all its forms, the purity of it cannot be tainted by magic. Magic cannot self-propagate, nor can it bring matter into existence. These are said in the ways of reality to prevent abuse of magicians on the innocent." As Izuku begins to read the words and turn the pages, he starts to recognize some of the spells, well, more like tricks. He's seen them in movies and at videos or parties that hire a magician, not that he saw them in person, since he never got invited to birthday parties. But it shows pulling a rabbit out of a hat, turning a wand into various flowers, and pulling items from beneath the cloak. Before he can consider getting started on practicing some tricks, he is interrupted by the growling of his stomach. Realizing the book is still going to be there when he finishes cleaning up and eating, he sets it down and prepares himself. Unaware that this was just the first step on his way to become the greatest magician the world ever saw. And thus began Izuku's long journey to learning his craft. It started simple. He would read the ancient tome every morning, gradually taking in the information and translating some of the more difficult concepts. So after nearly a month of just reading the book in the hopes of gleaning how to begin using this newfound power of his, he came to a few conclusions. Everyone's magic is different. He wouldn't have to walk with a staff, grow a long beard, and wear pointy hats, much to his relief, and it seemed that the trunk, having 6 compartments, would open after he achieved a new baseline for his magic. It also determined what magic was best suited for the wielder, so Izuku had to do some research to figure out what his outfit meant, which wasn't long. He pulled up old records of people who called themselves magicians doing tricks and using props. But since the trunk only gave him a wand, hat, and cloak to work with, he guessed he was limited to the most basic of magic. As he flipped through the pages, he noticed that surprisingly the book focused on magic that involved what the trunk gave him, so it left him wondering if he was given some other implements, would the book be different? This left him muttering for a while at the kitchen table. When his mom came in, it was a Sunday, so he was lazing about without much to do. Inko, as she walked by, saw her son's face buried in that same book he had a month ago. She questioned why, if he was supposedly given a quirk, that she hadn't seen it yet, and worried that he got tricked into buying a bunch of junk from a store and given a story to make him feel better, and while she wanted to question it, she couldn't bring herself to take this away from him. This new obsession overrode his own, more dangerous, previous one of chasing down fights and sulking about not having a quirk, so she deemed this healthy enough behavior, and who knows, maybe he gets good enough at parlor tricks to make a few friends, some who won't beat him up. Because everyone knows magicians are super popular with teenagers and almost all teens, right? Noticing that while she was cleaning some dishes Izuku was still stuck muttering, she decided to break her silence. "Sweetie, what does your new textbook say?" she mused. "I want to see some tricks." With a little more of a mocking tone than she may have intended, Inko puts on her best pouty face for her son. Izuku has always been a mama's boy, so when Inko does this routine she knows she always gets her way. "Mom, don't do that," Izuku whined. "You know I can't say no to that face. I'll show you something." This passage in the book was just giving me pause. This piqued her curiosity a little. Coming around to look over her son's shoulder, she is immediately aware that she has no clue what language it is that her son is reading, confusing her more since she doesn't ever recall Izuku signing up to learn another language either. Izuku dear, how can you read this?" Turning to look at her son, not expecting him to be the one confused at her question. "What do you mean mom, this isn't in a different language, it's just kanji." Izuku turns back to the book to make sure it was as he said, and all he sees is kanji. This causes Inko to grab the notepad on the fridge kept there when writing a grocery list. Using the pen attached she draws one of the symbols. Izuku is watching her earnestly. He sees the motion she makes, knowing that there is no kanji for that symbol, but when he looks at it, he is capable of reading it. "So time alone gives me the ability to translate it. How does it do that? Is it a visual effect or a mental one? Have I just learned an entirely new language? Could I speak this language?" This new discovery sets Izuku on another muttering spree when he is confronted with this knowledge. Inko, wanting to get back to the point at hand, grabs Izuku by the shoulder. "Honey, not the point." She gets his attention. "You will have plenty of time to ponder when you learn this language, and if there are any other benefits to that. Now what was confusing you, before everything else at least?" "Right, well the passage mentions that while there are universal rules to magic, each school has its own set of rules, rites, and traditions. But it doesn't say what that is, so I can't seem to understand the rules that would apply to what magic I'm supposed to use, and I don't want to break them." He began. "If I could figure out what I am, and what my magic is, then how it works, and the only thing I can find is that what I got is what a magician wore. But that doesn't tell me how I can avoid breaking the rules." As Izuku pondered, Inko had a different idea. "Since the book doesn't say what the rules are for your magic, then why not try some, and maybe you'll figure it out." The sudden realization on Izuku's face caused her a few small giggles. Her son could be too cautious for his own good and might benefit from coming out of his comfort zone every once in a while. Be bold, take a risk, and he might just find what he is looking for. At this sudden clarity, Izuku turns back the pages of the book and settles on a trick. Turning his gaze to his wand he picks it up, tucks it into the palm of his hand, concentrates, exhales, and quickly removes his hands, leaving the wand floating in the air. With a shriek his mom grabs him into a hug. "Oh Izuku, you have a quirk." It's just like mommy's, twirling him around the room. He starts to get dizzy, almost foaming at the mouth in this bone-crushing embrace. Tapping out on his mom's arm she lets him go. "Oh tell me how you did it." Her excitement is ever increasing. "Well, first I placed the wand in the crook of my hand, then I felt like I channeled the energy into the wand. After moving my hand it stayed." Izuku explained. "Here let me show you." As Izuku palms his wand again, repeating the same motion, when he lets go the wand simply falls to the floor. Confused, he picks up the wand again, repeating the trick, only to have it fail. This doesn't make sense. He frantically picks up the book, flipping page after page. "I'm doing as it told me, following the steps." Inko comes up behind him and leans over him to peek at the book. "Maybe it's one of those rules, and you broke one?" Proposing that he had broken an unknown tenet of his quirk. Considering this he goes back to the first page of the book and watches as more letters form. The magician never reveals their secret. Those words ingrain themselves into his brain. He can't tell anyone how he does it. Turning to his mother, Izuku concludes, "I think since I told you how I did it, I can't do it anymore." A small look of horror crosses his face at the realization of what that means. "So I can show my tricks, do them all, but if I tell anyone the magic goes away." Hurriedly he grabs the book, flips over to another page, scans it, then grabs the hat. Reaching up to his shoulder he pulls out another wand. Breathing out a sigh of relief that his magic isn't gone. "It seems that I can't do that trick anymore, or at least I can't do it the same way maybe." Inko slowly walks up to him and begins running her fingers through the tussles in his hair. It's a soothing feeling for Izuku, and one he needs now after a mini panic that he suddenly lost his gift a month after getting it. She doesn't understand why he keeps referring to it as magic, but she isn't one to complain about it. It's his quirk, and he can call it whatever he wants now. She mentally makes a note to go to a doctor to have his medical record corrected about his quirk, mild telekinesis. Sure, it doesn't match up to what she saw him do with the hat, but the wand just shows he takes after her more than his father, wherever he is. "Well dear, I am going to finish getting dinner ready, you put your stuff away, and set the table." "Okay mom" is all he replies. From that night on, Izuku would practice his new abilities. One of the first things he tried was getting his wand to levitate again. He found new ways to do it, but he knows that just palming the wand, the simplest way, isn't an option anymore. It wasn't as flashy, so he has been practicing a more fluid motion. This allows him to have his wand, or really any object, to orbit around him in various speeds, patterns, and he can even have them spin and rotate. This took him around 2 months to get down pat. So he's been practicing making them at a heavier weight, but he seems to be limited to around 10 kilos. This led to him practicing some more tricks. He has made the cloak of his as hard as steel, or as pliable as rubber, so he found ways to bounce stuff off of it. The hat tricks were very difficult, and he's been practicing it, but it's still a long ways away. He can store stuff in his hat, and he even managed to pull a rabbit out. However, he noticed it had a collar on it, and read that this was someone's pet. He understands what that third rule meant. He doesn't just make a rabbit when he pulls it from the hat, it has to come from somewhere, and he just kidnapped someone's pet. Scrambling to gently shove the furred creature back into the hat, hoping it made its way home. So he's stuck to just using it to store his notebooks and other things he wanted to keep on him. With his paperwork updated on his quirk, he got less people giving him crap at school, but Bakugo, he never stopped. "So you got your mom's weak quirk too, fitting for someone like you, still a useless Deku." "Yeah, you got your shitty mom's shitty quirk," rattled off one of his goons. This earned a quick smack from Bakugo. As much as he hates Izuku for being weak and still looking down on him, he doesn't tolerate people making fun of Inko. She works hard being a single mother and sole provider. So he still respects her enough that he keeps his torment solely to Izuku. It's why on Mother's Day, Deku gets a free pass from any torment, and he doesn't take or destroy his stuff, since he could be working on something for his mom, same on her birthday. However, today is neither of those days, so he decided he wanted to get that strange book he always sees Izuku reading. "Deku, give me that book," he demands. It's lunch, and the teacher isn't in the classroom, not that it would have mattered anyway, even with the change to Izuku having a quirk. He's still the same quirkless loser they never defended from bullies before, so why start now? The other students aren't much help either. Just because he has a quirk now doesn't mean they want to get to know him, or some are too awkward to try after everything they put him through. So they turn their backs to him. Izuku with practiced motions grabs the book from Bakugo's hands, and it flies into his hat, which he flattens down. "You shitty fucker, I said give me that book," lunging himself over 3 desks to grab his green-haired prey. Izuku ducks under his desk to avoid the right hook coming at him. He grabs for his bag and pulls out his cloak. "A fucking cape, Deku." Bakugo scoffs, "You think that piece of cloth is going to keep you from me?" He lunges again, Izuku making the cape more pliable to redirect the force of the blow. Kachine's expected bounces right now. What is unexpected is that Bakugo is as good an aerial fighter as he is on the ground. With a few quick explosions he spins and rotates his body to get a clear line on his target. Izuku is caught and receives a few lumps for his troubles. With a sneer, Bakugo picks up the crumpled hat and reaches inside, fitting just past his wrist into the top hat, only to find that it is empty. This infuriates him. Deku manages to distract him enough to hide the book. However, before he can interrogate his prisoner, the bell rings signifying the end of the lunch period, and Katsuki is no idiot. He knows he can't just get away with beating a student in the middle of class. Shitty teachers are that shitty to just let him do that. You got lucky. Returning to his seat, "I'm going to get that book from you, then I'm going to burn it to ashes." This was not much of a threat, but a declaration. One that Izuku took seriously. If he wanted to keep the book safe, he would need to get better, much faster. So that is what led to him working on his escapes. He started with the basics, tying himself to a chair in the middle of his apartment. This got him grounded when his mother came home and found him struggling to get out of the chair, and she nearly called the police in fright. So he relented to letting her know when he was practicing different escape tricks. Started getting really good at getting out of rope in various types of knots. So he started getting different books on different types of bindings, the famous straitjackets, handcuffs. Though he wasn't sure why his mother took one of his books away, he found it in her room, and it had all kinds of different ways to tie someone up. None of that compared to when he came home one day soaking wet. He was grounded for the whole summer when he told her that he went over to the beach that people keep dumping trash at, found a heavy microwave, carried it over to the pier, tied it to his legs, put himself in a straitjacket, locked it, and jumped in. He is now forbidden from practicing Houdini's famous water escape ever again. He didn't have a box to escape from, but he understands the principle of the trick. So he's content with that. Those tricks he put into practice to keep himself from getting beaten by Bakugo created a new arms race between the two. He would try to corner Izuku. Izuku would use a trick to escape. Bakugo would find a way to use his quirk to trick or trap Izuku, who would use another trick to escape. He would catch Izuku one day, wearing white paint and striped clothes, and keeping silent the entire day. Surprisingly, when Izuku stays really quiet, he's hard to find if you can't track him based on his muttering, so he jumped him in the bathroom stall and got stuck for an hour in an invisible cage. Izuku came to school as normal the next day. If anyone asked him why, he'd say that being a mime just isn't as fun, since you can't talk at all while doing it. Using some of his lackeys, they tried to keep Izuku talking while Bakugo snuck up on him, but for some reason they both walked back inside after talking for a bit. The only thing they can remember is him pulling out a yen on a string and being asked to watch it. So he couldn't trust his minions to help him if they fell victim to hypnotism of all things. This was just infuriating him more. Shitty Deku isn't even using his quirk anymore to escape, he's just using cheap parlor tricks. He fumed, "Not this time, I got a plan, if he can't see me or breathe, then he can't stop me." This ended with them both being suspended for 2 weeks during their third year of middle school, after Bakugo filled the entire building with smoke, so Izuku couldn't see him coming. However, they both got caught in the gym, trying to wrench a book from each other's hands like common monkeys. All this more direct confrontation helped to boost Izuku's confidence a bit more than he normally was, and he only stuttered a lot when he was in real danger, and Kachin just trying to take his book for the last 2 years wasn't dangerous to him anymore. More of a game, which he suspected Kachin of considering it as one as well. He noticed that Katsuki had a wider and more inventive control over his quirk than before, so actually being challenged for once greatly improved his uses outside of blowing stuff up. By this time, Izuku had managed to get the second and third locks off of the trunk, and in that was the props for his hypnotism, mime paint, a deck of cards, and an endless kerchief, which he thankfully hasn't had to use the last two, as he considers them his two most dangerous props. He still practices so he doesn't hurt anyone if he uses them. But during his suspension he began playing with knives, much to his mother's chagrin, but he managed to get down the folding knife trick. But not a lot of people are going around stabbing children these days, so he isn't sure if he could do it in the heat of the moment. But finally his suspension was lifted, and the results of the mock high school exam came back and would be announced when Izuku and Katsuki returned to school. Which confused him since the results came in 3 days prior, and why the school wanted to wait until they had returned seemed suspicious. The moment they were both in homeroom, however, an announcement for them both to head to the principal's office rang out over the PA system. "What did you do, you shitty nerd?" hissed Bakugo. "Me? Why would I have gotten us in trouble? She probably just figured out you were the one to break her windshield," Izuku replied. "Oh, and who was the one that filled the gym with balloon animals because he was scared of a little fall? You had me 50 feet up. Yeah, well, you didn't have to get out your stupid cloak, then, did you? Jerk. Coward." "Boys," came a third, more stern voice than either of those two. Realizing they had been arguing all the way to the office, they stepped inside. "So I brought you two here and delayed the other students from finding out the result of the mock high school exams for one reason." Pausing, raising the tension between the two boys, neither yet knowing the implications of this. "You both applied for UA, and you both passed the mock exam with flying colors." A duo of what rang out from them, one surprised and one irritated. "You shitty nerd, what do you think you're doing going to UA? I'm going there, and they don't take losers like you. I have just as much of a chance as you do of getting into that school as you." Izuku began his retort, however a very deep clearing of the throat alerted them both that something was wrong. "Now, before you both start an argument in my office," the principal began, lowering her gaze to meet both the boys, "you just got off of suspension. Do you really want to jeopardize that after such good news?" Both boys slowly shook their heads. "Because we haven't had someone from this school make it to a premier academy, like Shiketsu, much less UA, so I am going to give you some slack and pretend I didn't hear anything about a windshield or balloon animals, and you two are going to go back to your classroom and be on your best behavior today, or the consequences will be dire. Are we clear? See Crystal?" "Yes, ma'am." "That's great, putting on a bubblier attitude, have a great rest of your day." Waving them out of the office. "Look here, nerd," said Katsuki as he shoved Izuku into a wall. "Just because you passed a fake test doesn't mean you have what it takes to be a hero. Just because you are as much of a loser as the rest of these side characters doesn't mean you should go strutting around like a big dog." The only thing keeping Izuku from rolling his eyes was that Kachin would probably punch him for it, and he didn't want to get punched today. "So remember that when I take the crown, you can wallow with the masses at my feet." Letting him go and stalking into the classroom. After the principal's suggestion that they behaved today, the rest of class went pretty normal. He surprisingly even got a few students to come up to him and congratulate him on passing UA's mock exam. He didn't know who a single one of those people were. So he packed up his belongings and started to head home. He had 10 months before his entrance exam at UA, and he felt that he hasn't improved at all. He still isn't any closer to unlocking the fourth lock on the trunk than he was 5 months ago. As Izuku slowly makes his way down the path he normally takes to an underpass, where he practices some of the tricks his mother doesn't want him doing. So he keeps them hidden in this underpass in a crack in the wall, by fitting things into a spare hat he has. The signature All Might hat with realistic hair action, at least that's what the advertisement said, really it just made him look like a rabbit. But he found it doesn't even have to be a top hat to work with, but it seems other types of hats don't hold as much. Slowly getting out the various tools he wanted to practice with, he heard a rumbling from beneath his feet. He saw slime begin to ooze out of the storm drain a few feet from him. Alarm bells are ringing in his head that he should run, but he's never been in a situation like this before. Real danger, from a real villain. Oh, what a wonderful disguise this new body will be, gurgled from a ripple in what he assumed the face of the blob was, its two large eyes rolling in the slime as they focused on him. Gonna have to make some space to fit me in there though. So I'm just going to need to empty you of your insides, don't worry it won't hurt. A malicious cackle settles, echoed by the design of the overpass, the sunlight casting through the gelatinous body, shading everything in a dismal, sickening green. For long. Moving faster than you would think capable of this large blob, he latches onto Izuku's leg and slams him into the ground, dazing the poor boy. Scrambling to grab anything he can, his hand reaches the deck of cards lying about. Oh, you want to show me a magic trick, do you? Biggled the fiendish Jello. Izuku looked down and realized he had changed into his magician's outfit to practice. It helped him focus and get in the mood, which is why he did this in an underpass. His mother had seen him once dressed as this. And after 15 minutes of her taking photos of the cutest things since he was 4, he decided he would prefer to not have an audience when he dressed up. Pulling a card from the deck, his only response is, "Don't blink," and shuffles the deck in the most elaborate means this sludge has never seen. He formed the deck into a Mobius strip, only to flick them into a blade. A quick slash of the tentacle holding his leg frees him from the villain's grasp. You didn't think it would be that easy to capture someone, did you? Izuku mocked. I can tell you haven't a brain, since I can see right through your head. With a hearty laugh Izuku dodged the next tentacle to come his way. He wasn't sure why he was taunting this villain, one who said he wanted to kill, disembowel, and wear him like a suit. He was terrified, but yet he never felt more alive at this moment. Something in him wanted to show off, and he didn't have to worry about a booing crowd, or his mother walking in on him, just dying because he got too close to a villain, which since he watched so many hero fights, and wanted to be one himself, felt right. He felt in the zone. He felt like he was suffocating. He didn't realize that each time he had cut pieces off of the villain, they didn't go back to the main body, instead they formed behind him like a wall, cutting off his escape route and limiting his movement until he stepped in it, which caused it to collapse on him. Branching the blade of cards from his hand and pushing him deep into the muck. I'll admit kid, you put on a decent show, but you can't escape now, I got you, and your little hardening quirk isn't going to do anything to protect you now. As Izuku scraped and clawed at the slime, hoping to yield a grip to pull himself free. You can't swim out of this, I'm thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, there's nothing for you to grab onto with me. Feeling a rapid jiggle in the ooze, he twists his head to sound of clanging metal, and a heroic voice he would know by heart, fear not, for I am it suddenly cut off as All Might himself, takes in the scene before him, the villain he had been chasing through the sewers, had managed to grab a child. And from the looks of it has stopped moving. Ah, the great and magnificent All Might, monologued the villain. It's about time you caught up to me, had you been a little faster this child might not be dead. An evil cackle rings out from his mouth. He put up a good fight too, as you can see, I have him right in my feeling something off. He notices that the boy he had grabbed is no longer inside of him, but instead a gaze up to All Might's rapidly approaching fist. He sees the young child standing behind All Might. Detroit smash. And a massive gust of wind in the small space scatters the villain into many small puddles. A sharp gasping for air can be heard, and All Might turns to see that the boy is clutching his knees, sucking down large gulps of air. How did you? The boy raises a hand with a finger extended, causing All Might to tilt his head in confusion, until the boy vomits up some of the villain's slime and his lunch. Oh god, he tastes so bad. Tears in his eyes, from nearly suffocating, he was trying to get inside me. I'll never be clean. Izuku has yet to acknowledge his savior. If you hadn't shown up I'm not sure how I could have gotten away from him. Thank you All Might, All Might. His sudden realization turns into a shriek. Oh my god, it's really you, oh my god, oh my god. I just got saved by All Might. This delves into a mutter storm never seen before, as he seems to be able to ask multiple questions at once, asking for autographs, his favorite food, movie about his quirk, and it begins to overwhelm the immense man in more ways than one. Young man, if you ask these questions too fast, I won't be able to answer them all. All Might began. Now first off, are you okay? It seems the villain had dueled you for some time before I got here. Thankfully you have a teleportation quirk to get out of his grasp when he was distracted by my presence. That's a good head on your shoulders to notice a distraction, he praised. Izuku's head spinning that he was getting complimented by his idol. Now before I can autograph anything I need to get this sludge contained, so he doesn't reform again. He reaches into a shopping bag, pulling out 2 bottles of soda, and emptying them down the manhole he had risen from, slowly begins scooping the slime into the bottles. Right, let me help. Izuku rushes over to his stuff and starts digging through his bag. Nonsense, give me 5-ish minutes and I'll have this all cleaned up, not wanting to strain the poor boy who probably went through the worst time of his life. Noticing that the boy was standing there with a black stick, not a wand in his hand, waved it around, and the slime began levitating, swirling around the boy until like a stream of snot, speedily soared into the bottles in seconds. Leaving All Might the only job of putting on the cap. Izuku was unaware of how tense he just made the mountainous man. How did you do that? Well, it's my quirk. Izuku, confused, and unaware of the change in tone in All Might's voice. I just levitated him into the bottles. But you teleported out of the slime? His fist slowly clenched. Teleportation and levitation are 2 unrelated quirks, so how can you do both? What's your name? Oblivious to the situation he is in, and frankly too starstruck to think anything bad of his hero, I'm Izuku Midoriya, and I don't have a quirk, well not like other quirks, it's different, and a gift. The term gift set off a few alarms in All Might's head, knowing only one person capable of gifting a quirk to another. After quickly placing the bottle in his cargo pockets, he grabs the boy in a tight embrace and hurls himself across town. This rightly freaks out Izuku, who screams the entire way. Landing on the rooftop of a skyscraper, All Might's figure suddenly casts a very imposing shadow in the dimming light. All Might, is ever everything alright? Izuku is now fearful of what might be happening. You need to tell me now who gifted you that quirk. His stern voice leaves no room for argument. As he stalked closer to the boy, he knew this was a bluff. He was nearly out of time for the day and could feel the blood forming in his gullet. Well, I met this old lady, she ran SH shop, and I drew a card that gave me a coup quirk. Clenching his eyes shut in fear as his favorite hero seemed to consider him a threat, an even bigger one than the sludge that almost killed him not 5 minutes ago. Upon hearing a wet cough, he looks and sees a large cloud of steam. Unsure, he watches it dissipate, and a lanky, skeleton-like man is left standing, wearing clothes much too large for him. Where's All Might? Who are you? What's going on? Panicking. Kid, calm down, wheeze, I am All Might. The mysterious man coughed out, wiping dripping blood from his mouth. If you calm down I'll explain. Hearing this, Izuku does the only rational thing, he panics harder. Oh god, this man is an impostor. I just got brought to a deserted and secluded location with a strange unknown man. My mother warned me about this. I should have listened, now I'm going to be on the news. Izuku muttered, help, stranger danger, I need an adult. Kid, calm down, I am All Might, see. For a fraction of a second his muscles bulge, and All Might is standing before Izuku. He deflates with a cough. I'll tell you why I'm like this, and then you tell me how you got those quirks of yours. Deal? The deal. Izuku scuttles a bit closer to hear All Might's tale. One where he received a nearly fatal injury, which almost ended his career, and has effectively put a time limit on him. After hearing All Might's story, Izuku shares his, of him being bullied for being quirkless, how his mother struggled, his quest to find someone. He didn't notice that when he mentioned the rumors of a man in a black mask who had multiple quirks, All Might took great interest. Once he explained the shop and meeting Sophie to him, the practicing his magic, and what led him to today. So do you believe me when I say that I don't have a quirk, but can do magic? Young Midoriya, I have heard some tales, many of them false, some of them true. After hearing that Izuku feels deflated, his mother doesn't believe him, not truly, and All Might thinks he's a liar. But, I can tell from what you told me, and the conviction you spoke with, this isn't a lie. You really met a strange old lady who gave you a magic card, and now you have a power all your own. He would need to press Izuku to get information on this man he had tracked down. So he would do what it took to get this out of the child. He seemed like a good kid, one that believes what he is saying at least. But I need to know a few things. This man that you were tracking, do you remember where it was? He inquired. Seeing Izuku nod, that's fantastic, I need to find this man. He might be a very dangerous villain, and we can't let him just do whatever it is he is doing. Oh my gosh, I was about to try and meet a villain, my mom told me never to do that. Izuku cried. He knew why his mother had told him that villains were dangerous, and this is one All Might himself was hunting. What could have happened to him had he caught up to the man? Your mother sounds like a smart lady, and you understand that situation you were almost in. That's also a necessary tool to being a hero, knowing your limits. Well, I still have to turn in this sludge villain to the police. All Might walks over to the door, growing big and busting the lock. "You should be fine to get down from here, and if anyone asks, and just say All Might dropped you off here." With a boisterous laugh, he sailed off into the horizon, not noticing the bottles had fallen from his pocket. The walk home for Izuku was a very different one than what he had planned for the day, fighting a villain, almost dying, meeting All Might, sharing his secret with All Might, and learning his in return. He realized he had forgotten to get an autograph in all of that commotion. The large explosion from a few blocks down tore him out of his thoughts. Running over to see what the problem was, he recognized a few of the heroes keeping the pedestrians back. Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Mountain Lady, and Backdraft. What truly caught his eye was what was there to keep the people back from. The sludge villain had gotten free. Damn it, this villain has a quirk we can't beat, and managed to grab a kid who's blowing everything up. Waiting for the villain to turn, Izuku felt a growing dread in his gut. He didn't know many people who could cause explosions on their own, and was hoping it wasn't who he thought it would be. When the sludge turned, and Izuku's eye fell on the face of the closest thing he could call a friend, with a look of sheer terror, the face of someone who doesn't want to die. Izuku did the only thing he could think of. He ran in the slime. This time he reached deep into his hat and grabbed the first object he could, his deck of cards. Making a mace out of the cards, he ducked and weaved his way to the villain. With a recognizing glint in the villain's eye as he swung the mace down, burying it in the slime creature's head. With a laugh he began taunting Izuku. Well, look who it is, the little magician who couldn't and no All Might to be seen. How do you think you can beat me, with just a hardening quirk? It's not a hardening quirk. Using the cards to spread out from the slime's body, he started having them perform intricate patterns at a very fast pace in and out of the slime's body, slicing him into ribbons. Grabbing Katsuki's head and forcing it out of the slime to give him a chance to breathe. "Why the fuck are you here, you shitty nerd?" spat Katsuki in between breaths. "I have this under control. He's right where I want him. Really, now is when you want to be a stubborn prick. Just accept the help so we can both get out of this." He doesn't realize that Katsuki's left arm is still in the slime and swings toward his head at a frightening pace, popping with explosions. Izuku freezes when he is face to face with oncoming death. Only it doesn't come. A furious gust of wind blows through the alley, heading skyward as the clouds part and a sudden downpour hits them. "Fear not, for I am here." A boisterous call comes out of the great hero All Might. The onlookers and other heroes gobsmacked that someone so prolific and powerful showed up to handle the situation. Wow, that's All Might. One punch and he changed the weather. How did he get here so fast? That's why he is the best. In all the clamor, Izuku gathers up his belongings and slinks out of the alley, not one for the attention of the cameras, unaware that the video feed of the alley has been watched from an office by a small, white, furred dog bear thing. I guess I should be making some changes to who we take if that's the possible heroes we send out into the public. Can't even handle a pile of goop. Could think of at least 3 ways for each of those heroes to have handled that situation. Shaking his head as he turned off the monitor. Pressing a button on his desk, "Ms. Secretary, please inform the other staff members of a very important meeting. We have much to discuss." Right away, Principal Nedzu. The walk home took Izuku a lot longer than normally would have, since he had ended up on the other side of town. As he was passing the trash beach, Bakugo caught up to him. "Listen here, you shit, just because you were able to stop that villain doesn't make you better than me. I'm still number 1, and I'm going to be the best." Atsuki declared, "I don't care what tricks you pull, you will never get one over on me like that idiot slime or those other useless heroes. You hear me, Izuku?" Bakugo was taken aback when he looked at Izuku's face. Tears streaming down, he didn't know what to do. Normally when Izuku cried it was because he had bullied him, not because he challenged him. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" "I'm just happy you're alive to tell me that," Izuku sniffled. "I'm glad my best friend can still see me as a challenge at least. I was having a crazy day, and that you still want to be my friend makes me really happy. Not wanting this public display of feelings to go on any longer. TCH, whatever, nerd, just be there at the entrance exam in 10 months. You better get in. I can't expect a challenge from the other losers who might try to get in." He stomps away in a huff. "Goodbye, Kachin," Izuku shouts back to him. Hearing a very loud "fucking nerd" as he turned the corner. Izuku chuckles to himself. He called me Izuku. He hasn't done that in almost 10 years, and all that had to happen was for me and him to almost die today. From the same guy, no less. How crazy is that? I am coming around the corner like a normal person as a screech emanated from an alleyway. All Might has slid in front of Izuku. "Young Midoriya," he coughed up blood as he deflated. "Wasp." All Might, Izuku was surprised that the hero had taken time out of his day to track him. "I thought you were surrounded by reporters. How did you get away so quickly?" "Nonsense, no journalist has what it takes to keep me down. I practice the technique of getting away from them regularly," he laughed. "I came here for a very important reason. I was not fair to you." When we first met I treated you with suspicion because you reminded me of a more dangerous time in my life, and this wasn't very heroic of me. But when I saw you jump in to save your friend, I knew then you had what it takes to be a hero. So I want to do something. I want to train you to be the next symbol of peace. You want me to be the next symbol of peace, Izuku repeated, unsure of what he was hearing. How would you do that? He inquired further. I want to give you my quirk, beamed the emaciated man. I don't know what to say. Today I started out finding that I passed the UA mock exam, then I fought my first real villain, met my hero, shared secrets with him, saved my only friend, and now I'm being offered the chance to have his quirk. That's right, all you have to do is say yes. All Might, I refuse, he said with confidence. Yes, now all we need to do is strengthen you refuse, stuttered All Might. Not to sound rude, but can I know why? Clearing his throat and taking in a large breath, Izuku tells his tale. For all my life, I wanted to be a hero. I tried everything I could to get a quirk of my own, and a few years ago I finally did, and I had never been happier. I worked hard to get this far, and I believed in myself. It wouldn't be fair to take a second. I was already given this amazing gift, one I wouldn't trade for anything, but to take your quirk too, I couldn't. Not if there are other people just as qualified who need to be given that chance. It wouldn't be right of me to take it all for myself. So I know I am being selfish for refusing, but please respect that I want to be a hero, with my power, and not yours. He took in a large breath from this rant of his. The quiet took hold over them, Izuku waiting for the proverbial hammer to drop and get yelled at or insulted. What he didn't expect was laughter, not the taunting or mean type, but genuine, heart-tickling laughter. Oh young Midoriya, you are too much. The perfect candidate to accept my power, and you still think of others before yourself. You will make a fine hero indeed. I respect that you want to do this with your own power, and for that I want to help you. I will find someone else to wield my power, but I will still help train you to see you become the hero you want to be. All Might ponders that he had never met someone with such a conviction for good in them. Surely the world will be a different place without him using my power, but I still believe it will be a good place just for him being in it. Really, you'll help me? Izuku is beaming. He never thought that he would get hands-on training from his own personal hero. That's amazing, I can't wait to start. Well young Midoriya, it will take some considerable time, especially if you want to get into UA. Even I had trouble keeping up with the curriculum, explained All Might, adding under his breath, mostly the normal classes, though Izuku is too excited to have caught that part though. I will need to speak to your mother before and get her permission, and we'll need to be secretive about it. Izuku is staring at All Might and nodding his head so fast one would think his neck would snap. With a smile so wide it threatens to tear his face in half, he had never seen a child so genuinely happy. So first, my name is Toshinori Yagi, and I will introduce myself to your mother as All Might's assistant, explain that you and All Might had taken down a villain together and were impressed with your attitude and want to help you reach your full potential. Secondly, if she says yes, we will need a training regiment, one that helps your body to grow stronger and to help strengthen your quirk, but let me be clear, this training is to make you stronger, not hurt, so if you deviate I'll have to call it off. I will not be responsible for a promising young child working himself to death just to impress me, are we clear? Izuku nods his head even harder, absolutely, I won't let you down. I'll be the best student you ever had, and make you proud. Glad to hear it, but first, let's get some grub. Got any preference? Katsuden shouted with more childlike vigor than he meant, blushing profusely as he coughed. Katsuden, I would like to have that, if it's alright. This earns a chuckle from the older man. Funny, Katsuden is my favorite too. This begins Izuku's training to enter into UA and become their unofficial problem child. Thanks for watching this video. Part 1 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.